it's nefarious, man. Like, the brain works in fucked up ways.
The mind is one of the most deceiving, manipulative pieces of equipment, flesh, human bodies on earth. I never have trusted my brain.
All of that weight lives in your head, and you are the decision maker.
Psychology of entrepreneurship.
Hi, it's Ronsley. If this is your first volume, welcome. This is a weekly series where I go inside the mind of an entrepreneur, artist, athlete, academic to decipher what is the psychology of our decisions. I'm Australian, and I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians throughout Australia and recognize their continuing support and connection to land, water, and community. I pay my respects to them and their cultures and to elders past, present, and emerging of the land I'm standing on today. I extend my respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who listen to this podcast. My guest today is a creator of entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs. Women entrepreneurs that lead their community. Well, really, women entrepreneurs that lead their communities in rural India. He started, though, as a sports agent. What? His name is Prabhat Sinha. This volume is the combination of understanding our bloodline, mothers, the original entrepreneurs, and women empowerment. But first, Prabhat, the sports agent.
I decided to become a sports agent. I didn't know anything about it. I had no clue, right? I was just a person who loved sports, who was part of sports, who was an athlete at his high school and college time, but nothing really on that professional level. Now, I started to decide that I want to work with the athletes. So I decided to work with track and field athletes in the US, with NBA athletes in the US, and on a different level, I did work with them. I also worked with UFC, Ultimate Fighting Championship. The idea was just to empower them with my skills. So I would do endorsement deals. I would help them to get contracts done. Then I also kind of leaned towards corporate companies who wanted to invest in sports. So I was helping Rosetta Stone as a language learning platform. I was helping them to invest in Olympics. In 2016 Olympics, we invested for Rosetta Stone. We then invested in International Volleyball Federation. We hosted a International Volleyball World Championship in Netherlands. And idea was that how do you connect language to sports? So we came up with this cool idea where referees and athletes of volleyball saying different words. Let's say if a volleyball athlete from Spain goes to Germany and then he says few words in Germany, and then we kind of leverage that he's learning the different language when he's traveling to different countries through the Rosetta Stone language learning platform. So things like that, I was very much involved, and I was actually earning quite a good amount of money with this, what I was doing in sports. And I didn't know that I would go on that level. I would leverage all my skills and earn kind of good amount of money in sports, because it was really challenging in the US as well, right? Because sports market is not that easy to get into and kind of earn your living out of that. But I was lucky enough to do that. I was lucky enough to get introduced to a lot of good athletes, a lot of top level players as well.
But as you might have guessed, there was a twist in this story, and Prabhat left the United States and came back to India. But why?
Just that I want to do something for my community, and I always had that in my mind that, there's so many little Prabhats or young Prabhats who don't have that opportunity, who I was fortunate enough to have, and I wanted to give back. So I always had that in my mind since 2015, and that I wanted to go back for real. And in 2016, I decided to kind of wrap up my stuff and leave. And before actually starting anything, I decided to travel different villages and just speak to farmers, speak to the students, speak to the person who's cleaning the village, speak to the government officer, police officer, every single person who are daily basis interacting with the community. So I traveled for quite a long time, for about a month, and just speaking with different people from different villages in the state of Maharashtra. I wanted to get that sense that, okay, before I start something of my own here, what should I work in? And I was not there to kind of give advice or hey, I'm back from this US, I know all this stuff. No. I was actually talking and moving from one village to another to understand what are their stories are, to understand how people react, to understand, because even though I grew up in the village and stuff like that, I still wanted to, now as an adult, I wanted to experience that by understanding people's stories, by understanding what do they think. Every farmer has their own thinking, their own innovation. A person who's cleaning the village, of course, a lot of time it comes from different caste systems in India, and still it's happening. So I wanted to understand their perspective. I wanted to understand what do they think about their children, about their future.
Farmers in India are angry. Thousands across the country are protesting against new legislation they say will expose them to exploitation by private buyers of their produce and by big business. Blocking roads and railway lines, they're demanding that 3 bills already approved by Parliament are not signed into law.
This is a dangerous ordinance and we demand that it be suspended immediately. That's why we're stopping railways and roads. If the government doesn't pay heed to our voice, then we'll be forced to take even more scathing actions.
The agriculture sector contributes nearly 15% of India's $2.9 trillion economy and employs around half the 1.3 billion population. Under the 1964 Agriculture Produce Marketing Committee Act, farmers have to sell their produce at government-regulated markets such as this one. They're known as mandis, where middlemen help farmers sell their harvest to either state-run companies or private buyers. Most farmers lease or own less than 2 hectares of land and have suffered for decades. Many have been driven into debt by increasing costs of fertilizers and their inability to secure competitive prices for their produce. The main opposition, a Congress party, accuses Prime Minister Narendra Modi of making farmers slaves of capitalists.
That was a report by Al Jazeera, and it brings an important point to the surface, which is happening right now, the start of October 2020. Actually, the middle of October 2020. There are a lot of things that need to be solved, and this is just one of them.
Studies show that playing sports can improve a child's lifestyle across a range of different areas. It's been proven to be associated with improved academic achievements, behaviour, and attitudes, assisting in enhancing concentration and attention, as well as also having benefits on a child's personal development, building on things such as self-esteem, goal setting, and leadership.
So, Prabhat is off the land. And if you've listened to this show before, you'll know that we love people that are off the land.
Now, I grew up in rural part of Maharashtra, where I am right now, actually. So growing up here was very different. As I said, it's about 7 hours drive from Mumbai city. It's a very, very rural area. If you go like left 3 miles, as I said, you go hyenas and all that kind of stuff. So growing up was very different, but very interesting and innovative as well. So when I was growing up, I was never introduced to organized sports in my life. And I went to a school which had 4 rooms, 3 to 4 rooms for 10 standards. So you would be sitting together. We didn't have chairs or benches to sit. We would be sitting literally on the ground, and the rooms were built of like a mud wall and stuff like that. And we would be 3 grades in one classroom. So you have first, second, third, and you only have one teacher for all those 3 grades, right? So it was very, even though I'm right now 31 years old, I'm talking about this is in 93, 94, when people were sending their ships and everything to Mars and stuff like that. I was actually studying in a mudroom in one class with 3 grades altogether. And teacher used to sleep. And so it was like they would put one person in charge. They would tell that one person that, hey, you monitor all the other children. And you literally wrestle, you fight with everyone, and you tease each other and stuff like that. It was very, very normal. So we never knew how to actually study. We were just there to put up. Parents didn't care. Nobody cared. It was just like, oh, children go to school. There's only one school available. Now, school had another policy that in that time in India, right, there was a school didn't get a lot of grants and a lot of money and stuff like that. There was no English medium school. So I went to my native language, Marathi medium school, and it's a government school. So the policy of the school was that you have to work for 2 to 3 days in a farm. School had a small farm. So and it was really fun to do that though. At that time, in the beginning, we didn't like it because you have to really hard work. It was not like, oh, let's check out the farm today. It was not like that. You literally had to like pick cotton, and then you would see one of our teacher would be standing there with a big ruler and a stick. And it's very normal in India, right? Kids get beaten up by the teachers. Every single day, if we miss beating up by our teacher, it was like a great thing. Oh, we didn't get beaten up today. But it was very normal. It was not that, it was very, oh my God, I'm getting beaten up by teacher or something like that. It was not at all. It was super normal. And while growing up, we picked cotton, we planted corns, we did earthworm farming. There was another weed called, I don't know what is the name in English, but it would really smell really bad. So we used to have to remove that. And then I remember that for the next 3-4 days, our hands would have that smell. And then in that whole scenario, we started to also get beehives. We would climb trees to get beehives. We would swim the lake. We had a huge lake, which was built by our British Queen Elizabeth in 18-something, 90 or something like that. So that lake, it's a huge lake. We used to swim the lakes to catch ducks. We used to climb trees to get beehives. But interesting fact was that we never did swimming competition. We never did climbing competition. We never played any kind of sports, though we would jump in a water well, like literally we would jump about 30, 40 feet up high and do somersaults and do different kind of flips and stuff like that. But it was just by like you watch other children doing it and you do that, right? You were never introduced to as a diving sport, this as a swimming sport. That was not at all. We didn't even play cricket because this is very rural India where people played marbles and we would catch monitor lizards and we would actually catch ducks to eat, right? And swim for that. So I think that was a really interesting way to grow up. I never would have a different kind of childhood than this because it's taught me a lot of things. In our backyard, we used to have venomous snakes. As you're from Goa, you see a lot of venomous snakes there as well. So we used to have kraits, Russell's viper, cobras. It was very usual to see those snakes on a regular basis. And I think we just learned how to spot them. We learned how to, if it comes in your house, you kind of you have techniques to pick them up and then put it near to the farm where they can be safe. So things like that we learned. And my grandmother was the biggest influence across all this because my family, my mom and dad, they were always out doing social work and stuff like that. And they were in a emergency movement against the government in 1970s for giving rights and equality to the underprivileged communities and Dalit communities, which is like a lower caste in India. I had an opportunity to go to the US with my mom when she went to Yale and I went from my middle school and high school. That was the first time, Ronsley, that was the first time I actually got introduced to swimming. Now I'm swimming for not catching ducks. I'm swimming for competitions. I started to do climbing. So then I started to do climbing for competition. I got introduced to basketball, which is very different kind of sports. I had never even seen a ball, a hoop, nothing, right? It was like first time I'm playing basketball, first time I'm playing with a team, first time I'm understanding how important it is. Sports now, of course, when I was in the village, it was also important. Catching ducks was important. You are hungry, you got to catch ducks. You're going to climb trees to get beehive. But now it was like more like a competition sense, more like a playing with the teammates, understanding the relationship of your teammates, building that leadership skills, getting that confidence and understanding your self-esteem. And actually, basketball made me really happy when I was around my teammates, when I was playing for a high school team, when I was just being with the athletes. I really got empowered. So sports really empowered me throughout. And then I came back to India. I started swimming for the state team. I played basketball for the state team. And it was very, very interesting to go through all that and be empowered by sports in both the places. I was also empowered by jumping in the water well, climbing trees for beehive. And now I'm also empowered by swimming competitions in the US, playing basketball, climbing. All those things were empowering me and actually making me happy. So I realized sports is also a lot about making me happy. And that's how I kind of shaped my life in the US. And I did my graduation in Georgetown University in business and finance. And, a lot of Indians go there and they either become a medical student or they become a financial advisor or something like that. So similarly, I did that. I wanted to be in finance and business and stuff like that. But my heart was always in sports, always from the beginning. So I realized that, I started to work for HSBC Bank for about a year or 9 to 10 months, at least I worked there. But it was not my thing. I realized that I want to empower people with power of sports. And that's what I've been learning from my grandmother. That's what I've been doing when I was in the village. And that's what I also did when I was in high school in the US.
On a warm August morning in Harare, Farai, a 24-year-old mother of two, walks towards a park bench. She looks miserable and dejected. Now, on the park bench sits an 82-year-old woman, better known to the community as Grandmother Jack. Farai hands Grandmother Jack an envelope from the clinic nurse. Grandmother Jack invites Farai to sit down as she opens the envelope and reads. There's silence for 3 minutes or so as she reads. And after a long pause, Grandmother Jack takes a deep breath, looks at Farai, and says, I'm here for you. Would you like to share your story with me? Farai begins, her eyes swelling with tears. She says, Grandmother Jack, I'm HIV positive. I've been living with HIV for the past 4 years. My husband left me a year ago. I have 2 kids under the age of 5. I am unemployed. I can hardly take care of my children.
That was Dixon Chibanda, who is one of 12 psychiatrists in Zimbabwe, for the population of more than 16 million. Realizing that his country would never be able to scale traditional methods of treating those with mental health issues, Chibanda helped to develop a beautiful solution powered by a limitless resource: grandmothers. The link to his TEDx talk is in the show notes at psychologyofentrepreneurship.com. I told Prabhat that I believe that mothers are the original entrepreneurs, to which he said,
So I was very much influenced by my grandmother. My grandmother was a big part who shaped me, who kind of, showed me what is going through a real challenge is. And my grandmother was always there for me. And she also taught me how do you lead your life? How do you go about it? So it's very interesting that, mothers, grandmothers, they have always become a very much influential part and very much a role model for me when I was growing up.
When we come back, your bloodline, your ancestors, your platform is so unique. Don't disrespect it.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
Our aim with this audio documentary has always been to build a strong community of entrepreneurs and creatives to provide a space where they can use their voice to share their authenticity with the world. As a valued listener, your voice matters too. We love to hear your feedback and ideas, so don't be shy to let us know how we're doing in the ratings and comments. If you have a message for our production team or know someone who would be a perfect fit as a guest, you can find out more information on how to share your input at psychologyofentrepreneurship.com.
So I would love to provide you with context of my motherland. I might be Australian and New Australian, but I bring a lot of culture and perspective from India. So according to India's National Family Health Survey, an exhaustive household government survey from 2015-2016, around 33% of women have experienced spousal violence, physical, sexual, or emotional. That's 1/3 of women. And I will say that a lot of them wouldn't even admit to being abused, because I can attest that I actually know some women who think that if their husband doesn't abuse them emotionally, at least, that he might not care about her as much anymore. Because also, that study I spoke about earlier, it adds that just 14% of women who experienced violence have sought help to stop it. So, Prabhat, with India constantly suppressing the sacred feminine in different ways, why did you turn out different?
I think, remember I talked about in the beginning that how I've been influenced by my grandmother and my mother. So behind this, when you have a leading person in your family who is a woman, and for me, there was a huge influential, because my grandmother was, she would do the same amount of work in the farm field than a man can do, or more than that, right? She was very ferocious. She lost her husband when she was in her mid-30s. So in India, in that time, my grandmother had never been to school. She used to live in a small hut before, right? And that time, when you lose your husband, the first person who kind of try to abuse you is husband's cousin or someone like that. And that is very normal in a country like India, right? You have those kind of stuff going on in every single household. So because of that, she always had to be very strong. She would be really like ferocious woman who won't allow anything, right? She had to become that person. And when I was growing up with her, I saw all this, like what my grandmother used to catch snakes. She would literally cut wood with the axes and more wood than a man can cut. She was very, very strong. At the age of 85, she climbed the 2-story of my house on a ladder, right? On top of her head, she would have the water bucket. And a man, I don't think so any man at 85 can do that. And I have a picture of her still. I published one of the article in this Wire news about my grandmother, how I have been influenced by her. So she climbed the whole thing. Then she went, in India, you'll see like a white colored plastic water tanks in every houses, right? And there's a top here, you open it up like this. So she went inside that. She cleaned the tank, and then she would go back, put the water back again. So unfortunately, like she passed away 2 years ago. But what I was trying to say is at the 85, 84, she was doing this. And I think I never saw inequality between men and women in my house, because my mother was also similar force, right? Just like my grandmother, she started Women's Bank in India, first rural women's bank. Then she was a part of a Jayaprakash Narayan movement, which was fighting for the rights of women, fighting for the rights of lower caste people. So I've been seeing this from my mom, my grandmother while growing up. And I think that was a key influential for me. And that's where I also realized, right? Otherwise, how would I if I grew up in a family where women are not treated equally, it's kind of difficult and challenging to also realize that this is not right. Because when you grew up seeing your grandparents beating their wives, your parents beating their wives, so you're beating your mom, so you feel like this is a very normal thing. You don't feel this could be a different thing, right? And if you find the survey in India, 52% women believe that getting beaten up by their husband is a normal thing. The reason behind that is because it's not considered as taboo in those families, because there's always been seen their ancestors doing the same thing again and again and again. When there's a break, I think that's where people realize. And in my family, it happened from my grandmother, right? There was a break because my grandmother, of course, my grandfather used to beat my grandmother. That we knew. But he passed away very at young age when my grandmother was in mid-30s. So I think that's kind of a power. That's where I realized that by growing up with this powerful woman, my mother and my grandmother in my house, that's where I realized that there's injustice for women. And that's where I realized that I want to do something for them. I think that's why. Otherwise, I would have not got this.
Prabhat Sinha is the founder of the Mandeshi Champions Program, a sports academy for rural athletes to empower them through the power of sports. The academy provides free of cost coaching, equipment, and nutrition with a 400-meter running track. From this training camp, there are over hundreds of athletes that represent both national and international levels in a variety of different sports.
You know, people always document about, or whenever like they hear about my athletes going on the winning a medal at the national level, getting selected at Asian Games. So they realize, oh wow, this, and then they speak to the athlete. They say, oh yeah, we have this program, blah blah blah, this, and then they're like, oh yeah, we want to reach out to you, and then they would talk to us. Hey, tell us more about that, more about how the program is. Of course, that's a part of it. How the athletes are winning medals, how the athletes are representing on the international level and stuff like that. But I think the core is not that. You know, it's not about winning medals. It's not about. I always say that to a lot of people. So I think that what part needs to be documented more is I feel that that we are trying to have here, or we are trying to shape future of India in a way that we need to build. We need to have our young generation to be a good human. Right? That is really, really important. See, right now, everybody's behind. Like, I get phone calls every single day that, oh, my daughter wants to play badminton and she wants to win a gold medal in badminton at the national. Would you be able to help us? Everybody's behind that race that everybody wants to win this, or their daughter, their cousin, they want them to earn this much amount or do this. But nobody's talking about that they want to learn about diversity. They want to learn about inclusion. They want to learn about history. They want to learn about, about how do you react to a friend? How do you speak with the girl? How do you speak with the woman? How do you speak with the elderly people? How do you make sure that we are all equal? Nobody talks about that. No one. Like I've never got a phone call that, hey, your program is so cool. We would like to send our children because you do this diversity of the classes, because you do this. I think because it's not out there yet, right? And I think it's tough also. I understand that it's also a tough part for people to like, because it doesn't show something we have won. Even though we have won a lot of stuff. If you do that, I think we will be the point where we will be maybe in 30 years. When people think about, oh, India wants to be a superpower. I really sometimes I don't understand this whole culture of being a superpower. Like if you ask Norway, right? If you go to Norway, I've been to Norway for a couple of competitions and stuff like that. So if you go to Norway, people don't talk about superpower there. People talk about the dog's insurance. People talks about, the like green revolution. Like how do you save your earth, and real problems, real challenges. And here we are talking about, oh, how do we beat China? How do we beat Pakistan? Like this is actually going on in the villages of India. It's really crazy.
A country driven by hyper-competition and perfectionism is taking a toll on the children of India. In an article by the Indian Express, they talk about how the unreasonable standards of parents are weighing heavily on Indian children. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in every 4 children between the age of 13 to 15 in India are depressed. The pressure is so intense and common that a student commits suicide every hour.
And you'll be pleased to know that it isn't just sports stars benefiting from the Mandeshi Foundation.
One of the athletes from our program, she was about to get married at the age of 18. And she said, I want to stop my marriage, but I need to do something for that. Then she said, should I become police officer? Like a lowest police officer. I was like, okay, whatever you feel like. She said, I need money to start a touring program. I didn't have that from Mandeshi, but I gave her my own money. Okay, you can, just some 4 or 5 grand just to do that. That's like $400, not big amount. So we give them that. And then after 5 months, she comes back. She said that, Dada, I become a police officer. And I was like, oh, great. Wow. I didn't feel that empowered then. But then the 2 things she said, that I'm a first police officer from my village, a woman police officer. The second thing she said, that my marriage is not prolonged because I earn about $500 per month. And so my family is okay to have me because now I'm the main breadwinner of the family. And I can make my own decision and make my own choices. So then I realized that the money having access and control over finance is very important. That's where we started this Youth Development Center program, where now we got 17 girls out of 40 graduated from the program. Out of 400, there's others are still in college. They're still studying. The one who graduated, 17 out of 40, got already a job, which is $500 and above, right? So we are trying to, and then if you hear from them, they would say the first time someone is telling us about gravitational waves. So first time someone is telling, like, helping us to go to Ajanta, go to different places, go to science labs in Mumbai and different cities, and actually learn from there. I got people from Duke, from Georgetown coming in before the pandemic and teaching at this Youth Development Center. I had a scientist, like biodiversity person who brings actual snakes and talks about snakes to them, who brings actual flora and fauna and talks about them. So we got all these people coming in. We got like a police commissioner of the Mumbai city talking to them about how it is to be a police officer, how it is to be a bank person. So we got all these real people going in and talking to them about this, sharing their numbers to each other so they can always ask them questions. So I wanted this to be like a school where they learn about science, they learn about sports, they learn about every single thing. They learn about different castes, different religion, and they learn about being a good human being.
India is so diverse. We have light-colored and dark-colored humans. We have Mediterranean and Arab-looking, as well as Asian and Chinese-looking humans that call India home. Every few hundred miles, the language changes, and with that, so does the culture and the food. It is really hard to encapsulate Indians into just one bracket. Just as it's hard to explain some of the issues that the Indian people face. Next time you order some Indian food, look up the origin of the dish that you're eating, learn more about the land that taught me to share and love and be happy. But before we close, Prabhat, let's get a bigger picture or a better picture about the different impacts your program is making.
One is we train athletes in all these forms, wrestling, track and field. We pick top level athletes as well. We give them best training. We give them nutrition for all free of cost. You have bananas, chicken, fish, everything they get free of cost. We get protein and all that. That's one program. The second program is that Youth Development Center, where we want these children, we want these athletes to be a good human being. We want them to understand the inequalities which are going on in your community, in your country, in your village. We want them to make friends with different castes, with different cultures, and understand where every single person comes in, understand their stories. So how do we do that? So we decided to create this program called Youth Development Center, where we help girls, especially girls. And we have a batch of 400 girls in that program, where we help them to understand science, understand history, understand geography, all those subjects, because we want them to understand what has happened in the past and how do you lay your future goals on the basis of the past. We want them to understand World War I, II. We want us to understand the independence of India. We want us to understand how one person came from England and drew a line between two countries which were actually similar and made India and Pakistan. So why would you hate someone if you do not even know anyone from Pakistan? Why would you hate someone from Bangladesh or any other country if you don't even know anyone from there? It's just because one British guy came in and drew a line and he had no clue about the system. He just wanted to separate people. And on that basis, we are following the same thing. So how do we kind of teach all those things to them? So that was very, very important.
Psychology of entrepreneurship. Psychology of entrepreneurship.
Next week on the Psychology of Entrepreneurship, we're going to be revisiting Volume 27, where Ronsley had an eye-opening chat about the wonders of meditation with author and founder of Ziva Meditation, Emily Fletcher. They get into the science behind stress relief, how meditation can help to overcome trauma, and the many other reasons as to why Emily is so passionate about how everyone can find benefits in the practice. Times have been extremely tough lately, So this volume will not only be great for entrepreneurs, but anyone that needs a little escape and peace of mind.
Psychology of entrepreneurship.
I interviewed Prabhat because he has years of demonstrating a passion for sports through sponsorship guidance, sales, marketing, nonprofit fundraising, implementing global sports strategic partnerships for leading brands, and providing sports opportunities for young rural Indian youth. He has employed over 50 rural female athletes in the Indian sports industry and is constantly supporting women to become the breadwinners of their family. He has pioneered NYU's sports initiative in India through looking for sponsorship opportunities for the first global sports conference on sports law and business in India. He is the founder of mandeshifoundation.org, whose focus is to empower women entrepreneurs and their communities in rural India. He has the biggest heart, is a herder of communities, and is an amazing entrepreneur.
Psychology of entrepreneurship.
This is a Must Amplify production. Special thanks to every guest expert that has appeared on the show. Editing, voiceovers, and sound design by Kaylee Bunnyman and Tiago Vega. Guest research and content by Claire Gould and Corinne Castles. Project managed by Kaylee Bunnyman. Produced and hosted by me, Ronsley Vaz. For more episodes and where to listen, go to mustamplify.com/POE.
Hey, it's Kaylee from Must Amplify. I'm the sound engineer for this volume of Psychology of Entrepreneurship. I'm part of the team that made this production come alive. I work as a part of a global team with our studios based in West End, Brisbane, Australia. If you would like a podcasting checklist, email me at kaylee@amplifyagency.media. That's KAILI@amplifyagency.media. We specialize in finding your voice and making sure it's heard by the right people. If you are considering whether a podcast is a good idea for your business, check out our other show on shouldistartapodcast.com. Are you still listening? Here's a little gift to you for sticking around.
Realizing that his country would never be